Shivam has called from Fulham. Hello, Shivam.
Hello there. Hi, so Mr. Streeting, I have a question for you. You previously said that full pay restoration is a journey, but your current offer is only 0.9% above inflation. And that means that full pay restoration at this pace would take over 20 years. Do you think that's acceptable? If not, what's an acceptable time frame for you?
So, Shivam, in terms of the figure you just mentioned, the pay award that resident doctors have had for this year averages out at 5.4%. And that is the highest award in the entire public sector. Taken together with the deal we did with the BMA last year, that's a 28.9% pay increase.
Mr. Streeting, now, what is an acceptable time frame?
Let him answer your question. I will get back to you, Shivam.
I accept the argument that you and your colleagues in the BMA are making, that your pay has been eroded over more than a decade by the Conservatives. I mean, not literally your pay, because you wouldn't have been in the NHS all of that time, but the pay for your part of the profession has been eroded. And the same is also true for nurses, for consultants, for other NHS and social care staff, for the entire public sector. And that's why I'm proud that when we came in, not only did we do the deal with resident doctors, but the entire public sector has had real terms pay rises. All I ask you to consider is two things. One is that the public finances are under real pressure. So we're doing as much as we can, as fast as we can. And secondly, it's not just the pay that we have to contend with, it's also the conditions. You don't need me to tell you, because you're working in it, the sort of conditions that NHS staff are subjected to in terms of the bricks and mortar, the fabric, the building, the kit and the equipment. And that's not just true for our National Health Service. We'd be having the same conversation about our schools, about our prisons, about the entire public sector. So no, Shivam, I have not been able to overturn more than a decade of pay erosion in 1 year. But 28.9% is not only a good start, it is not the condition on which you and your colleagues should be walking out on strike. And I'll say something else to you. And my question back to you is, when you're out on strike at the end of this month, standing out on the picket line protesting a 28.9% pay increase, what's your message to the patients whose operations and appointments and procedures will be delayed and cancelled? And also, what's your message to other NHS staff who will be inside picking up the pieces, having received a lower pay award than you, and in many cases working on lower pay? I don't think that's fair. I don't think these strikes are necessary, and I don't think the BMA's actions are reasonable.
And just before I hear from you, Shivam, and I will come back to you, worth saying that almost 350,000 nursing staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be asked to vote from Monday on a 3.6% pay rise. Shivam, your response?
I know that Mr. Streeting did actually answer my question, but this huge percentage increase...
I think he did.
This huge percentage increase that Mr. Streeting's talking about is just an extra £4 an hour. 3 years ago, doctors were paid £14 an hour, and now we're paid around £18 an hour. And what we're asking for is a reverse of the pay cuts. As Mr. Streeting said, a journey to pay restoration, and for a doctor to be paid £22.67 an hour to deliver life-saving treatment, to restart people's hearts, to look after hundreds of patients overnight. £22.67 an hour. In fact, if Mr. Streeting agrees today to pay doctors, currently doctors are getting paid less than their assistants. If he agrees to pay doctors £22.67 an hour a day, and £22.67 an hour, you can call off the strikes. And I'll tell you what, you don't even have to do it all in one go. What do you say? £22.67 an hour, Mr. Streeting.
Over what period, Shivam?
Well, that's up to Mr. Streeting. What does he... That's the whole point of my initial question. But obviously, 20 years is not acceptable. I mean, that's... Obviously, Mr. Streeting might not even be in power in 4 years. Before
Wes Streeting answers that, can I ask you something? And perhaps he'd like to reflect on it too, once he's answered your question. What about your pensions? Pensions are very generous. Under the NHS scheme, staff contribute between 5 and 12% of their salaries. The state contributes, comparatively to other places, and certainly the private sector, 23.7% to your pension every year.
Yes, and our pensions have also been degraded because the pensions are based on
Still
our
better
pay,
than most.
and
Still
our
better
pay
than
has been
most, Shivam.
significantly eroded. And you try and tell a doctor that your pension, which you're going to get in about 50 years, doctors are struggling now.
Well, it's growing now. That's the point. Way more than other people's.
Look, let's just start on the points of agreement. So look, I understand that last point, Shivam, which is talking about pensions when you retire doesn't pay the bills today. I totally understand that. I also accept the arguments that you and your colleagues have been making about pay erosion and also the conditions you've been working in terms of things like your rotations, your placements and the bottlenecks in career progression that mean it is now harder to progress on to the promise of becoming the consultants of the future, where if we can get you into promotion and onto consultant level, you're paid at that stage as a starting salary over £100,000 a year. So on that, I think we're all agreed. Now, in terms of where pay sits today, and this was before the 5.4% pay rise came in, a first-year resident doctor out of medical school would be paid £43,275 on average. That's more than the average worker in this country. For the second year out of medical school, it goes up just 1 year later to £52,300. In the core training years, it averages out at £67,000 a year, and specialty registrars are paid almost £75,000. And that doesn't take into account the employer pension contributions. Now, you are all highly skilled, qualified people, and we desperately need you in the NHS. So I don't discount all of those things for a moment. My reluctance to sit here and say, here's how we map out the journey to the pay restoration you're campaigning for, is I don't make promises I can't keep. And you will see the state of the public finances as they are today. And it would be, I think, really unfair for me to sit here and say, well, by the end of this parliament, we can get to X or Y, because I can't guarantee that the public finances would support it. And the second thing I would say is in terms of the pay that's been awarded this year, it is the highest percentage pay increase across the public sector. We cannot afford to open that pay award. We just can't. And even if we could, it would be unfair on the people who had a lower percentage pay increase and who are paid less, who are at the forefront of my mind because they are struggling to pay their bills even more. So those are the constraints I'm operating under. That doesn't mean that you know, in terms of the Health Secretary you've got to work with, I mean, quite genuinely, you've got a Health Secretary that is sympathetic to the arguments you're making, has worked with your predecessors to increase pay significantly by 28.9% in the first year that I've been in, and who wants to work with you to address all those other issues, the rotations, the placements, the bottlenecks, all of those other things. Honestly, do you think that the alternative that stares me across the face in the House of Commons will be better? You've got the ghost of Christmas past and the Conservative Party that left you out in the cold and left you out on strike. And you've got the ghost of Christmas future in the form of Nigel Farage and Reform, who don't even believe in the NHS and don't agree that I should have given you the money last year. So work with the partner you've got in front of you and call off these strikes. We can make progress. Don't set it back.
Okay.
And the final thing I'd say is there are choices and trade-offs. If doctors are out on strike and we're cancelling operations and appointments and inflicting that misery on patients, we're also paying a heavy price financially, and we're going to have to find the money from somewhere, and that limits my opportunity to do
doctors' pensions?
Well, it limits my opportunities to deal with the other issues they're talking about in terms of doctor unemployment, in terms of their ability to progress to consultant posts.
Would you look at that hefty pension? That was generous pension. 23. If my employer was putting 23% into my pension, I'd be dancing down the street.
Well, I mean, we've got this situation, Sheila, where the pension pot, by the time people become consultants, is so big that consultants lobby us to change the tax rules because they're taxed so heavily on the pensions because they're that valuable that they're like, oh, I might as well not bother working, my pension's so valuable. That's where we get to then. Now, if the BMA want to come to me and say, do you know what, given that challenge, we think we would rather have a slightly less generous pension in order to have higher pay today.
You'll talk to
Those
them.
are the sorts of issues you can get into in a discussion. But I've offered to talk. They haven't taken me up, and that's one of many reasons I think it's unreasonable.
We've given a big chunk of time to that issue because it's so important.